This is a crime that has reached into the heart of that community. The Department of Justice has opened a hate crime investigation into this shooting incident. The FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals Service, Civil Rights Division, and the U.S. Attorney's Office are working closely with our state and local partners, and we stand ready to offer every resource, every means, and every tool that we possess in order to locate and to apprehend the perpetrator of this barbaric crime. Acts like this one have no place in our country and no place in a civilized society. And I want to be clear, the individual who committed these acts will be found and will face justice. Now, as we move forward in this matter, my thoughts and prayers, and those of our entire law enforcement community here at the Department of Justice and around the country, are with the families and loved ones of the victims in Charleston. Even as we struggle to comprehend this heartbreaking event, I want everyone in Charleston and everyone who has been affected by this tragedy to know that we will do everything in our power to help heal this community and make it whole again. I encourage the people of Charleston, South Carolina, and the wider area to continue circulating the photos of the alleged perpetrator and report any tip, no matter how small, no matter how minor, to the tip line, which can be reached at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Thank you. And now, today's announcement. Today, I am joined by Secretary Sylvia Burwell from the Department of Health and Human Services, Director Jim Comey of the FBI, Assistant Attorney General Leslie Caldwell of the Justice Department's Criminal Division, Inspector General Dan Levinson of the HHS Office of Inspector General, and Deputy Administrator and Director Dr. Shantanu Agrawal of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We are here today to announce a major advance in the federal government's fight against fraud in our nation's healthcare system. Over the last 3 days, as part of a coordinated nationwide takedown, the Medicare Fraud Strike Force, a joint initiative of the Departments of Justice and Health and Human Services, comprising federal, state, and local investigators and law enforcement officials from across the country, joined with 7 additional U.S. attorneys' offices in charging or unveiling charges against 243 defendants in 17 federal districts for their alleged participation in Medicare fraud schemes involving approximately $712 million. This is the largest takedown in the strike force's 8-year history. It is the largest criminal health care fraud takedown in the history of the Department of Justice, and it adds to an already remarkable record of enforcement. The defendants charged over these last few days include doctors, patient recruiters, home health care providers, pharmacy owners, and others. They are accused of an array of serious crimes ranging from conspiracy to commit health care fraud, to wire fraud, to money laundering. They billed for equipment that wasn't provided, for care that wasn't needed, and for services that were not rendered. In one of the more egregious allegations of exploitation of both the Medicare system and vulnerable patients, the owners of a mental health facility in Miami billed for intensive psychotherapy sessions that resulted in tens of millions of dollars in reimbursements for the doctors, based on treatment that was nothing more than moving patients to different locations. Several of these patients suffer from illnesses like Alzheimer's and dementia and were unable even to communicate with their supposed caregivers or therapists. Further, nearly 50 of the defendants in this takedown are charged with fraud relating to the Medicare prescription drug benefit program known as Part D, which is the fastest growing component of the Medicare program overall. One owner of a healthcare provider in the Southern District of Florida received $1.6 million from Medicare Part D for prescription drugs the provider never purchased and certainly never dispensed. Another defendant, a doctor in the Eastern District of Michigan, is alleged to have prescribed unnecessary narcotic pain medications to patients in exchange for the use of their identification information to generate false billings. Patients who attempted to withdraw from the scheme were threatened with a loss of access to their prescription narcotics. Having deepened these patients' addiction, the doctors then used that addiction to keep patients bound to their scheme. Now, taken in total, today's action represents the first large-scale effort to focus on Medicare Part D fraud and demonstrates an expanded federal focus on this important issue. Now, the charges that we are announcing today are the culmination of a truly national effort involving approximately 900 law enforcement personnel acting in concert to execute a set of highly complex and highly coordinated law enforcement activities stretching across the country from Florida to Alaska. This takedown, like those before it, would not have been possible without the key partnerships forged by the strike force over the last 8 years among federal, state, and local officials, and the cooperation spurred by the joint initiative known as the Healthcare Fraud Prevention and Enforcement Action Team, or HEAT, that was launched by DOJ and HHS in 2009. As a result of strike force operations since 2007, we have filed charges against more than 2,300 individuals, accounting for over $7 billion in Medicare losses. This is a crucial part of the Department of Justice healthcare fraud enforcement efforts, which include the recovery of a total of $15.3 billion through False Claims Act cases in cases involving fraud against federal healthcare programs since 2009. Now, these are truly extraordinary figures, and they reflect our administration-wide commitment to safeguard precious public resources, to rid our healthcare systems of fraud and abuse, and to sustain the integrity of programs that are essential to the public welfare. In the days ahead, we will continue our focus on preventing wrongdoing and prosecuting those whose criminal activity drives up medical costs and jeopardizes a system that our citizens trust with their lives. The Department of Justice is prepared, and I am personally determined to continue working with our federal, state, and local partners to bring about the vital progress that all Americans deserve. Now, I want to thank all of the law enforcement officials who were part of the team that made this sweeping takedown possible. Their tireless efforts enabled us to move quickly and aggressively, and their inspiring collaboration will be a model for us going forward. Now, at this time, I'd like to turn the podium over to Secretary Sylvia Burwell, who's been a dedicated leader and a truly indispensable partner in this important work, and who will provide additional details on today's announcement. Thank you so much, and now Secretary Burwell.
Thank you, Attorney General Lynch, and thanks to everyone for being here today. Medicare is the cornerstone of the social compact that we have with our citizens, and there is no greater responsibility than ensuring its integrity. That's why eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse is a top priority for the administration and the Department of Health and Human Services. We are deeply committed to protecting the Medicare and Medicaid programs and will not tolerate theft from taxpayers. Today's development is a victory for those taxpayers and each of us who will depend on the stability of Medicare in the years to come. As Attorney General Lynch mentioned, this is the largest arrest in the strike force's history, both in terms of the number of individuals as well as the dollar amounts. The investigation stretched across the nation. In fact, this is the first action we've taken to pursue cases in non-strike force districts. This followed the data, we followed it where it led, and it exposed more than 240 suspects, and specifically we targeted Medicare Part D. And as we identified allegations of fraud like these today, the Affordable Care Act increased Medicare's flexibility to suspend payments to providers pending investigations. And we are using that authority today, stopping payments to certain individuals and entities that are associated with these cases. Through excellent investigative work, which included data analytics combined with real-time field intelligence, as well as meticulous planning and strategic execution, this team has made real gains in our ongoing fight against fraud. These arrests add to the approximately 2,300 people charged as a result of these operations, and the strike force has a conviction rate of 95%. These efforts, enhanced by the Affordable Care Act, add to the hundreds of millions we have saved through fraud prevention since the law was passed. With new tools like enhanced screening and enrollment requirements, tough new rules and sentences for criminals, and advanced predictive modeling, we have managed to better find and fight fraud, as well as stop it before it starts. This administration is committed to working across agencies to better serve our taxpayers, and fighting fraud is a key part of our efforts to build a healthcare system that delivers better care, spends our dollars more wisely, and puts empowered, educated, and engaged consumers at its center. I applaud the work of the Strike Force. With their help, we will continue to be diligent in our fight against waste, fraud, and abuse, and in protecting the integrity of these programs. Let today's events be a message to others across the nation. We will not stop here. We will work tirelessly to prevent these programs from becoming targets and fight fraud wherever we find it. That is how we will keep Medicare accountable, reliable, and strong. And now I'm happy to introduce my colleague, FBI Director Jim Comey.
Great. Thank you, Sylvia. Turn that just a little. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Great. I want to join the Attorney General and Secretary Burwell in thanking the folks who did the hard work to make these cases possible. I especially want to thank the men and women of the FBI. It is their toil and their tenacity that makes possible the work that I get to stand here and talk about in Washington. That work every day across this country makes an enormous difference for incredibly vulnerable populations. As both the Attorney General and Secretary Burwell noted, healthcare fraud is an enormous problem in this country. Healthcare spending is 1/6 of our economy. Those of you who follow criminal work know that if you want to find criminals, you follow the money. There is a lot of money there, and so we find a lot of crime there. We have over 2,700 open healthcare fraud cases across the country because that's where the money is. In these cases, we followed the money and found criminals who were attracted to doctors' offices, to clinics, to hospitals, to nursing homes in search of what they viewed as an ATM that was a freebie to them but is actually filled with taxpayers' money. We see these cases running the gamut from corporate fraud type cases to enterprise type cases to one-off ripoffs. These crimes take money directly away from vulnerable populations, right? People who need this care, old folks, poor folks, people with disabilities. There are no victimless crimes when it comes to healthcare fraud. These offenses harm every single person who pays for their healthcare premiums. It harms every business that supports healthcare for their employees. It harms every single taxpayer in the United States. $1 stolen from our healthcare programs is $1 too many. So how do we make these cases? We make them using the tools that we use in our most sophisticated endeavors. We use intelligence to try and understand, so what are the trends? Where are the bad guys going next so we can get there before they get there? We use technology to collect and analyze and share huge amounts of electronic information. We use forensic accounting and analysts, extraordinarily smart and talented people, to plow through this information to decipher it. We use rapid response teams to surge to where the bad guys are going. And we use our bread and butter investigative techniques, wiretaps, undercovers, sources, interviews, surveillance, all the stuff we do to make our most difficult cases. And last, we rely upon effective partnerships. We do nothing alone, especially when it comes to battling healthcare fraud. The partnerships we have forged, especially with the HHS Inspector General, are vital to this effort. We need help, though, in a different way. We need help from the public. We are doing lots of hard work every day, but there are things that the good folks of this country can do for us, and actually I'll name 3. The first thing is, if you see something that seems weird to you, or too good to be true, freebies or benefits or prizes or gifts in connection with healthcare, tell us. Right? If it feels too good to be true, it is almost always too good to be true. Please let us know when you see such a thing. Second, read those forms that come in the mail, your explanation of benefits. I know they seem boring, and I hope they're boring, but they may contain indications that something is going on that we ought to check out. And last, protect your benefit cards, protect your ID numbers as you would protect the vital parts of your identity. If you see something that makes you feel strange, that makes you think something might be going on, call the FBI or call the HHS Inspector General. You're not going to get somebody in trouble unless there is trouble. Right? We investigate things all day, every day, and some of them turn out not to be something, and nobody is harmed. But if you don't tell us about it, we can't check it out. So working together, we are going to continue to try to find where the bad guys are going and send a very, very powerful message that there are significant costs in jail time to this kind of conduct so we can change behavior. With that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Leslie Caldwell, Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Criminal Division.
Thank you, Director Comey. Today's takedown is really a prime example of 21st century data-driven policing. Every day, the Criminal Division grows more strategic in our approach to healthcare fraud, to prosecuting Medicare fraud. We're analyzing billing data in real time, working with our colleagues at HHS. We're targeting hotspots around the country where the data shows that Medicare fraud is pervasive, and we are focusing on the types of healthcare services where the data is showing there's a high potential for abuse. We're also using the data and other techniques that we've learned over the years to speed up our investigations. And by doing this, we're increasingly able to stop these schemes at the developmental stage before they grow, before they spread, and before they move to other parts of the country. And we're focusing in particular on medical professionals, specifically doctors, but also other medical professionals. And so far in today's takedown, 19 doctors have been arrested and a total of 44 medical professionals. This approach that we're taking has led to great results like the ones we're seeing today. I also want to just note that our approach to healthcare fraud, working with our colleagues at HHS and our colleagues in the Civil Division, is really more than paying for itself. During the period from 2012 to 2014, the average return on investment for the Healthcare Fraud, Abuse, and Control Act program was nearly $8 for every dollar that we spent. So in other words, the American public is getting an almost 800% return on its investment in our efforts against Medicare fraud. And that includes only the money that we've actually recovered. It doesn't include the decrease in payments that's very significant as a result of the deterrent effect of our efforts. So I want to thank the Criminal Division lawyers and other employees. I want to thank the U.S. Attorney's offices around the country who assisted in the effort, the FBI, HHS, and our many state and local partners on this very successful takedown. And I'd like to turn things over to my colleague, Dan Levinson, the Inspector General of HHS OIG.
Thank you, Leslie, and good morning. As you've heard, today's action marks the nation's largest criminal healthcare fraud takedown effort in history. This week, the Office of Inspector General deployed more than 300 special agents and forensic.
Sorry. I misunderstood your warning. Yeah, I'm all done.
Does ACR3 know that I've got to keep going? Have you talked to her? If you want to key in and talk to her, because I am really going to be going blank if that's what comes to, because I got 2 minutes to get out there.
Mr. Washington, you're on
It's only
television.
3 on 3.
CNN, Fox, CNN. There you go.
No, we'll go Fox.